Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks for coming to Dreamforce in San Francisco this year. We're happy to have you. Hope you're having a good time. And personally, I'm excited that you all joined us here to learn a little bit more about integration. My name's Oliver Demuth. I'm a customer success manager here in San Francisco. I've been with Salesforce 6 years, and I've put together 3 great customers to share their integration stories with you today. And we'll do some Q&A at the end. First, the safe harbor statement. You'll see this about 20 times this week, I believe. We just announced our earnings last week. Things are good. Business are good. If you have any questions about our safe harbor statement, go to salesforce.com/investor. Get all the details there. So we're here to talk about integration essentials, everything you need to know to get started with your integration project. We're going to hear from Cars.com, Global Forex Trading, and Grizzard Communications. We're going to take your questions, and we're going to have you leave here today with some key nuggets that are going to be useful and help you as you plan your integration project back at headquarters when you get back home. My goal for this session is to really motivate everyone and empower you to go and tackle that tough integration project. So if it's something you've been thinking about for a year, putting off for a year, you're not sure if there's going to be ROI on it, you're not sure what the metrics should be, you're not sure if you can afford the investment that is required for integration, after this hour, I want you to think, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And there's tons of sessions here at Dreamforce on integration, so we're the first, we're the best. Hopefully after today you won't need a bunch of other sessions. You're going to learn everything you need to in the next hour. But if any of these titles interest you, there's later today, a couple tomorrow, a really good one on Friday for IT executives, integrating with your IT environment, your infrastructure. So lots of resources available for integration starting with today's session. And I'll show this slide again at the end of the presentation. So if you want to jot down a time or a room number, we can handle that. And before we jump into the content, I'll show this slide again at the end of the session as well. We're going to take Q&A on Twitter. How many people have a Twitter app on their phone? So we might not have a lot of questions.
That's good.
No Wi-Fi here? Oh, and we don't even have a clicker up here, so what's going on, Dreamforce? All right, so backup plan. We have microphones right here in the aisles. Stand up, ask questions, we'll be fine. And if you are in the hallways with Wi-Fi tweeting later, DF09 is the official hashtag for Dreamforce. I was running late this morning with my kids, taking them to school, so I missed the keynote, but I followed it all on Twitter, all the announcements. Gavin Newsom's hair, it was all right there, real time on Twitter. Great technology, so real-time conversation. And then for this session, if you do have a signal and you do want to, actually, I'm going to motivate you. I have a flip video for the best, most interesting question that comes through the Twitter feed, but you have to tag it 360DF09. So for anyone who's really crafty and can get online to their Twitter client, good luck. So here we are. We're talking about integration. 3 steps to integration success. And I want you to mainly hear from our customers today, not from me, but it starts with defining your process, right? So you have to focus on the business process. What is the challenge you're trying to solve? If you skip that step, you're going to go spend a bunch of money, burn a lot of calories, and maybe build some cool integration, but it won't necessarily solve the problem or the business challenge that you were trying to solve. So make sure you focus on the business, what the headaches are, what data is missing, what sources of inefficiency you can find in your process, and make that the focus of your integration discussion. And then you define the integration layer. You can integrate with Salesforce at the presentation layer, the application logic layer, or the data layer. So 3 ways to integrate, and we're going to hear about more details about all 3 of those ways today. And then finally, you got to choose your approach. Build it yourself or go with an off-the-shelf solution. And personally, I always recommend going with one of our great partners. Go with a pre-existing connector out there. Thousands of customers have come to Dreamforce before, have come before you, and have done these integration projects and used technologies that are available. You'll hear from a couple today, but Cast Iron, Boomi, Informatica, Pervasive. There's tons of integration partners out there. They all have really robust solutions that talk to all the systems that you're trying to talk to, whether it's a SQL Server, an Oracle database, Great Plains, Microsoft back office systems. It's been done before, so leverage that experience. Or if your situation is so unique or you have all these great resources internally and you want to build it, we support that as well through our web services API. So in terms of the integration layer, you can do simple things through mashups with the UI and the presentation layer to just make life easier for your reps or for your end users. You can incorporate business logic through workflow rules, approval engines, Apex scripting, Java scripting, et cetera, to put in logic that's not natively in the Salesforce CRM application. So that's another example. And then, of course, for your data model, your security model, for your IT organizations that want deep data level integration at that layer, we can support that as well, and you'll hear those stories today. So like I said earlier, we're going to hear from Cars.com, Global Futures Trading, Grizzard Communications. The goal here is to share with you 3 different flavors of integration, 3 different sets of requirements, 3 different companies with different resources, different goals, different objectives. And this is, their thought process of how they tackled their integration project and what kind of results they drove, what kind of ROI they achieved, what kind of success they had with that. So, if you have some good questions for them, think of, save those questions. We'll get them talking at the end of the session. There'll be a little bit of time left. But the idea here is everyone in the room is representing companies of different shapes and sizes and different resources. So hopefully something here will resonate for you. So you guys can go and take it back to the home office and go and really spearhead that integration project that you've been putting off. So first up is going to be Larry Hall with Cars.com, who's going to do a little demo for us. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Oliver. Well, thanks everybody for coming to this session. I'm absolutely overwhelmed right now. I'll just let you guys know. First, a little bit about Cars.com. We are an online classifieds marketplace specific to the auto industry. We specialize in connecting consumers with auto dealers, and we do this through our affiliate, which are newspaper partners, as well as marketing. In terms of what our sales force looks like, we have about 200 sales reps, both inside and in the field. The bulk of them are in the field. All of our territory is divided by shipping county. And we needed a way to really give ourselves and give our salespeople just a peek into their daily sales lives. As a salesperson, especially an inside salesperson, it's got to be tremendously difficult to visualize what your territory looks like when you're sitting in front of a phone or a computer. And adversely, I guess the field salesperson, well, at least in our organization, needed a little bit more help with planning and routes. So we decided to go with a Google mashup. Here's sort of a slide, just kind of pointing out sort of the high-level stuff here. We do drive by, first of all, the Google map. It's based off of the account owner. So when we click on the Google map, we only will show the account owner and any accounts that fall within that territory or within that county. And the reason why is just when you are sending information to the Google API, it could take forever if you continuously are feeding information and it has to plot out points on a map. So let me just, I guess, switch over and do a live demo of how this actually works. Let's see here. All right. So here we are in Salesforce. We have sort of we do have a visual force page which is manipulating the layout. So we do not have the hovers. We just simply have links which connect to different sections on the account page. Below our summary and our high-level details for our salespeople, we have a link to the Google map. So salesperson simply clicks on the link based on the account owner and the shipping county. As you can see, Google just starts pointing and pulling things out on a map. Now, the green guys are customers. The red guys are former customers, and anybody who's blue is a prospect. Now, as I'm rolling over, well, you can see, first of all, we've got information, whether or not this is a customer, whether they're independent or franchise, their address, and, of course, their phone number. Down below, we've also got a Google chart, and the Google chart gives the sales rep just an instant visualization into how much of their territory they've actually penetrated. So kind of a nice add-on feature, and our sales folks really love it. I really like the fact that, of course, you have the map and the satellite and the hybrid views, so that way you can really drill down into a dealership, or, of course, you can pull out and sort of see as a salesperson where the bulk of my business is, or where do I need to expand my business. Now, a couple unexpected benefits with this tool that we really didn't foresee, I think, was that it's an awesome sell-through tool for any salesperson. Simply, they can look on the map, they can connect the dots, they can see, okay, all right, here's where I need to go today. This is who I want to sell. I want to maybe corner this region. Now, I don't know if you folks know much about car dealers, but car dealers in themselves are very competitive. So car dealers, they have banner ads, they have billboard ads, they have TV ads all over the place. So we actually instruct our salespeople to use this as, you've got cars.com here, you know, this guy down the road doesn't have it. So what a salesperson can do is say, well, hey, you know, let's see if let's drill into where we are here. We'll go to the account we start on, which is actually yellow. So as a salesperson, they could target either their prospects or their former customers simply by saying, oh, hey, Acura of Ramsey, well, we've got Jack Daniels Motors on with us, Joe Height Motors, and Prestige Toyota Scion. Don't you want a portion of that business? Well, obviously not, because they're not on with cars.com, but that's the pitch for the salesperson. You know, show them the relation to where they are within the account. One of the things that we deal with when we get prospect lists, and this probably happens in every organization, is sometimes you get bad prospects. So our sales folks will drill in, and I call this the stalking aspect. They'll literally drill in and they'll say, okay, are there cars on the lot? Well, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it's, you know, sometimes they'll call up and it may be a Chinese restaurant, you know, and they'll say, hey, I'd like to sell you cars.com. And they'd say, no, we are not interested, or how may I take your order, you know. But here, if we look in the actual tool, you can see that cars are sort of stacked up left and right, back and forth next to each other, which is pretty consistent with a car dealership. This works a lot, or works very well, I would say, with our independent customers, and these are guys who don't have the big franchise name on them. So, yeah, I think really, like I said, the biggest benefits of this tool, well, first of all, it's a sell-through tool. You can use it to sell the relationship. You can stock with it, and I think the biggest aspect or best benefit was it only took a week to develop. So the longest part really took planning. We all just kind of had to sit down and invest our time and say, what do we want this to do? We have a very talented developer, and she, you know, literally knocked this out of the park in a week. She was like, oh yeah, no problem. You know, she literally took care of this. She came up with, you know, the nice chart on the bottom, and to further the tool, we've actually used it to do some territory management. We have a custom tool which actually will map a territory in purple, of course, because we're cars.com. And what it'll do is sort of outline the territory as well as pull up those little individual push pins on Google. So as we have new hires that come in, they can get a great visualization of, you know, this is where I will be selling, you know, here are my prospects, here are my customers, now I know what to do. So that's about it.
Let's check your slide. You have your,
Wrong one.
There we go.
I think you covered all your points, Larry, very well, very well. Now, the interesting thing, let's go back to your screenshot real quick. The interesting thing here is I've seen a million Google mashups, right? Everyone has tried to do a Google Maps mashup. A similar solution to this is available for free on the App Exchange. So if you want to learn more about how to, this is an example of a presentation layer integration. This is synchronous, this is real time, and this is the best example. I mean, this is the best example of a Google Maps integration that I've seen, and I'm amazed that your developer took, you know, less than a week, a few days to put this together. We were so impressed. She's here.
She's here just in case.
In the session?
In the session right now.
Stand up. Stand up.
She's back there.
Hey, thank you. So when Larry showed me this demo 2 months ago, I was so impressed, I took it to our internal tech ops team, and we're in the process of implementing something similar in our Salesforce org internally. So, because our reps have been asking for this kind of data on the account screen for a long time, and we're going to finally give it to them. And the other great thing here is, with the API work that you did to custom develop this, there's actually 2 Google APIs that you're referencing. The Google Charts API to get the nice little pie graph, and then, of course, the Google Maps API. So great job. Thanks. Next up is Tom Fox, who's Operations Manager at GFT, Global Futures and Trading, and we're going to hear another integration story from Tom.
Hey, everybody. Is everybody having a good time at Dreamforce so far? Good. I'm not going to be as exciting as the Black Crows, but I might do a little song and dance before it's all said and done, if you play your cards right. So I'm Tom Fox. I work as the Salesforce administrator for Salesforce Operations Manager for Global Forex Trading. We're an online foreign currency exchange organization. So we basically have a proprietary application that our clients use to perform trades whenever they're trying to trade Japanese yen for US dollar or what have you. I've been there probably a year. They brought me in as part of a strategic initiative to really try and get Salesforce humming for the organization. They've used Salesforce for 7 years. They've loved it. We have a very compliant team of users, several hundred users. We're at about 100 users, or 100% of our employees use Salesforce all the time, every single day. We audit them all the time, and they do a good job and never get in trouble. I came in, and one of the early projects I had was the project I'm going to talk about today. Came in just because they wanted to torture me. They kind of wrapped it inside another 6-month, completely re-optimized Salesforce, change everything we're doing, and by the way, we want you to integrate with one of our other data systems. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and show you how easily we were able to pull it off. So what we had was a system where we had a couple of different data silos. One was Salesforce, where we had all of our customer information. The other one I'm going to refer to as the back office platform, or BOP, which was a transactional system. So where we kept a lot of our information that relates to the people that trade with us. Both great systems, but the problem we had was every month, some of our key staff members, key stakeholders in the sales processes would have to take all this information out of one system, sorry about that, and mash it up and manually push it into the Salesforce system and try and figure out how we're hitting our sales numbers. How are we doing? Are we getting on commissions? So I had a sales operations manager basically spending 2 days of his time taking data out of one system, massaging it, taking data out of Salesforce, massaging that, pushing them all together, reporting on it, and then saying, well, this is how we're going to change our sales processes to fit this information. And then he'd do it a month later. So every single month, we were losing at least 2 hours of his time and a lot of accounting staff's time as well. So when I walked into this, I saw right away I had a huge way to put a feather in my cap if I was able to pull this off. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but we'll talk a little bit about how I tried to pull this off. So when I look at trying to build any sort of solution, in particular an integration, I really try and chunk it down into a few components. So we have requirements. That's basically, what do I have to have? What do people tell me I have to have? I have restraints. So the things I have to have, what's going to try and keep me from getting those things? And then finally, I have the deciding factors that go into building the solution. So we'll get all those pretty pictures that I made up there. So when I was looking at this solution, I had a very short list of requirements. I had to take Salesforce and integrate it with an XML document. I don't know if any of you guys have ever dealt with an XML document. I'd never heard of it. I was on a wiki immediately when I saw what this was supposed to be. And I had to take those two systems, bring them together. The XML document was going to be a big problem for me because I couldn't change it. I couldn't get to the development team that built it. They just basically said, "Bleh, here you go. Good luck. Welcome to GFT." So another requirement I had is I was going to be having to make a system that was very, very easy to use because I was the only person doing this integration. So I didn't have the development team that built the BOP. I ran Salesforce. Sales operations manager wasn't going to be around. So I needed to have something that was going to be able to give me a lot of reporting information very simply and also be a very simple integration piece that I could manage and get myself around because I'm by no means an integration expert whatsoever. In terms of restraints, they kind of built off of the requirements I had. I had an XML document that I couldn't change. They just basically said, we're going to give it to you. It's going to have the data in it, and you figure out the rest. And if you want to change it, it'll be 3 months from now. And my deadline was in a month. To further add to the issue, I was going to be flying around the world while I was developing this. So I was going to be in London and then Japan and Sydney deploying my other project. So I needed something I could get at very, very, very easily. So when I sat down, I figured, well, the XML document's done. I can't do anything about that, so I'm going to forget about that and try and make Salesforce my real hero here and try and do everything that I can based out of Salesforce. So right away, I went to the App Exchange. If anybody's not been there, it's number one first place to go if you're doing anything to customize in Salesforce. So I sat down at the App Exchange. I found a wealth of really good partners. I think Oliver's covered them all for us. And I started to look through what advantages they had. The first thing I always do, kind of an Amazon sort of approach, is I look at the reviews and see what people have to say and hope that they're not fake people. And when I was looking at the reviews, I saw some really good reviews for an application called Boomi. And I was partnering up as part of my re-optimization project with a consultant firm, and they also recommended Boomi really, really highly. And when I started to look at Boomi, I saw it had the reporting tools I needed. And I saw, as a further advantage, I could use it in the cloud. So I'd have Salesforce in the cloud and my integration piece in the cloud. And if I'm going to be in Tokyo and I'm going to be partnering with a consulting firm that's going to be alternatively in San Francisco or Chicago at various times, then I really needed to be able to get at the system at all times. So the decision came pretty quickly for us. We took a look at it. I had one phone call with Boomi. They kind of walked me through their product, and I said, that's fabulous. Yes, get it for me tomorrow. So it came time to deploy it. I had Boomi, I had the XML document, and I had Salesforce. What I did first was built Salesforce around my XML document. Again, I have a source data file that I cannot change at all, so I use Salesforce and all its flexibility. A custom object that I can relate to an opportunity object, validations, formula fields, workflows. I built all of those right around the XML system. What's that?
Just checking out your slide.
Oh, yeah. The slide did not come as part of the integration piece. You have to make that on your own. So when I started building that system up, I built it around the XML file. And then I was able just to go inside the integration component, Boomi, and just click a button, and it just kind of sucked up all the things I didn't understand. All the API information, all the XML structures. It just basically gave me two lists. Here's your files here, and here's your fields inside of both your files, and just map them up however you want to. Which was fabulous for me, because I didn't have time, and I'm by no means technical. So as I was traveling around to the different cities and the different continents and being jet-lagged and training users for 12 hours during the day, I would go back in the evenings and sit down and talk to kind of a development resource I was bouncing ideas off of. And in live time, we'd be looking at Boomi, sending it to a complete copy of our production organization in a sandbox, and just testing it all the time, saying, this isn't working, how can we get this fixed? And the whole time we could go back to Boomi, who was managing the integration component, and they were the experts on that. I didn't have to learn about the integration component I was building. They would give me all the information I needed. So we were constantly going through this while I was in Tokyo and they were in the United States. So I got done, pushed that system out, and just flipped the switch and cut over a system that 8 times a day determines what data set it needs to pull. So it figures out what time frame it needs to pull from, pushes that into Boomi, grabs the data, stuffs it right into Salesforce, and the users are never even wiser. They just have a custom object that they can go look at. And I have the power of using roll-up summary fields or the reporting system inside of Salesforce to pull that through with. So I call this slide adding up to 1 because I sat down with Boomi after the fact and said, let's do a little post-action review on this and see what I really did. The users don't care, right? So if you do a really successful integration piece, they never bother you because they're just going to use it and go running on about it. When we started to crunch the numbers, it was astronomical. It was unbelievable to me. We had a 95% reduction in the maintenance cost that went with integrating these systems. Previously, not only did they have the whole manual system, but if something was broken, they'd have to go and grab these teams from around the world and get them in one room and say, what's broken? How can we fix this? We got a 360-degree view of the integration and our organization. So when I say that, we started to consolidate data from 2 separate data silos and bring it into one under one roof with Salesforce, but I also at all times could look at the integration component and see what was happening with it, which was very, very important. I'll talk about that in a second. 5,000 is the next number I have. That's going from $5,000 in technical staff that we basically have to throw at any time that we have a breakdown in the integration to essentially $0. Because I can just get on the horn with my integration wizards over at Boomi and say, you gotta save me, help me fix this. And 5 minutes is the final number, which was the best number for me. I was new at GFT. I really needed to kind of sell the fact that this new department was worth all the investment that they put into it. And I took a report that took 2 days for them to compile, and it's 5 minutes. And they can run it anytime they want to. It appears in their dashboard. And anytime we want to build a new report, it takes 5 minutes because they're just building out of Salesforce. It was really, really fantastic for us. And the number that I can't put on here is how I validated myself as a Salesforce operations manager at the new company that I was at. Immediately after I deployed this, they started saying, what else do you want to buy? What else do you want to do? And I could go out and start getting more tools. I could bring on more staff. I was able to really explode my department the 6 months after I deployed this because of the success I had on this project. My boss, who's the COO, now refers to me not as the Salesforce operations manager, but as his project ninja. And I'm seeing if I can get that on a business card, so I don't have any business cards for you today, but afterwards I'll send you one that says Project Ninja. But it really was a huge, huge win for me and for our organization as well. Very, very exciting. So I have this last kind of slide, the process that all of us have gone through, right? Kind of start off, maybe not as a monkey. I start off as a monkey, but you guys don't look like you start off as a monkey and get all the way down there to where we're back arched over the keyboard. So I'm going to go through the value adds. I call it the evolution of CAN, because when I looked at this, I was wondering, how the heck am I going to do this? I mean, not only do I have a whole other project, I'm not really an integration whiz by any means. This is how I figured out after the fact how I was able to do it. And the first thing I did was preserve myself. I was solo. I was kind of cowboying this project, right? So I made sure I looked at a system, particularly because I couldn't get to that XML file and prove what might be wrong in that XML file. I needed a system that allowed me to cover my hindquarter. And Boomi was able to do that. The integration piece that I built there, having it in the cloud, was able to do that. I get reports on my iGoogle dashboard. I was telling Oliver today. Every single day I go into iGoogle. It's the first place I go, and I get a report of what's happened with the integration component, smack dab right in the middle of the screen. It's super easy. So every single time I had a problem, I knew about it before anybody else did, and it would be solved. And they would go back and say, well, what happened here? And I'd say, oh, we had a little hiccup, and I fixed it, which was fantastic for me. I can't exaggerate enough. If you're going to take on an integration component, do it, because it will help you get to be a project ninja, and you can get fancy new business cards. But make sure that you have all your reporting components available for you. The next one was turn to the cloud. So I kind of refer this as get your head in the clouds. Having an integration component in the clouds really saved my bacon, I guess, for lack of a better word or phrase. I was able to get to it whenever I wanted to. When I was at home, if there's a problem, I could get to it. And I could kind of leverage that Salesforce type approach that I was really familiar with. That really helped me out a lot. So I call this stay native. I guess it kind of fits with the slide, right? Because we have some people that look like natives on the slide. What I mean by this is a couple of things. First of all, you've got a great tool in Salesforce. So if you're doing integration, just get it inside of Salesforce because it has so many rich features that you can do. I built a data table to receive an XML file that was completely structured around the XML file, and it took me like 10 minutes with a custom object and a few fields and formula fields. And every time I need to build upon it, I don't care about the XML file. I just go into Salesforce and make another field or another report. In addition, go to the App Exchange, because most of the partners you're going to find there are using the really rich APIs that Salesforce has to offer. So if you can get into those partners, they'll give you a system that functions just like Salesforce does. I'm in a completely different system that Boomi offers, but it looks and feels like Salesforce to me. So I really understand it intuitively. And finally, I would say value prop. Being able to go back to my bosses and say, look, this is what I was able to do all on my own. It really helps you start to become that person that they turn to for projects. I go above and beyond Salesforce projects now. I mean, it's not always fun when it's a Saturday night and I'm working on a project, but they turn to me a lot, and it means I'm very valuable to them as part of their organization and all the other sort of benefits that come with it as well. But I would say, sit down, work out your numbers. I knew very clearly I was going to take 2 hours off of a key member of our organization's plate every month, maybe even more, because he ran these reports a lot more. So in closing, what I would say is don't be intimidated by integration. I'd done some integration work before, but this was so easy, it was like starting from scratch. If you have anybody asking you, hey, we kind of have this data in these different places, or if you even see it, just suggest the idea. I put together a solution that we got a cost return on the very first time we ran a report. So we covered our cost of buying the Boomi system the first time we ran the report. And it was fantastic. Something I didn't think I could tackle, I was able to because of Salesforce and the partners. Thanks.
I think that that's a tremendous story around ROI. I mean, I don't know what your numbers were, but if you just did the quick back-of-the-napkin calculations on ROI based on some of the efficiency gains that you talked about, the maintenance time reduction, the productivity increase from your sales reps, remember that most integration projects have tremendous ROI. Even if you just throw some basic conservative numbers at your integration project. I've been doing a lot of ROI analyses lately for some of my customers. One of them's here today, Foresight, sitting over here, and they are working on putting together an ROI justification for a potential integration project. So they've been putting off a massive integration project with their Oracle back office for a couple years now. There'll be tremendous benefits for their sales teams if they could see order information in the Salesforce UI. So we're going to develop that model and get the CIO to buy off on there's positive return here if we invest a little bit in the integration. So great job, Tom. Now we're going to hear from Mark Livlin, who's Director of Integration and Architecture at Grizzard Communication, based out of Atlanta. Another great 360-degree integration story from a Salesforce customer.
My name is Mark Litherland, Grizzard Communications out of Atlanta, Georgia, and we are a marketing agency specializing in the nonprofit sector. And our company is almost 90 years old and has been serving that market for all that time. And if you can imagine a company that is that old, it has a lot of very ingrained business practices. We had a lot of siloed information. We had people who literally would walk on different colors of carpet because they didn't want to get on the other side of the business. I mean, it was that siloed when I came in there. Well, we wanted to look for a solution that would allow us to move the kind of volume that we do. Now, when I say we're a marketing agency, we do all the traditional stuff that you would expect. We do broadcast, we do media and things like that, but the biggest part of our business is direct mail. Yeah, we send you those little cards that you see in your mailbox. And we push something on the order of 300,000 orders through that, and about 100 million pieces a year. 100 million pieces a year of personalized direct mail. So when you get something in your mailbox, it says, Dear John, Dear Mary. It actually has your information on it. That's the kind of information that we knew we had to deal with on a daily basis. And with the way the economy was moving, we needed to be able to change what we were doing. The order, if you can imagine putting together an order for producing 10,000 pieces that are going to mail into Los Angeles County and going to be all personalized, that's a very complex thing to do. We also had an extremely high volume, pushing 10,000 of these orders a month through for our clients. And for that, we knew to support that kind of volume, we needed a very robust, very flexible database system that would go in. We needed to be able to let our users manage things en masse, because we don't have 10,000 different people to manage 10,000 orders. We only have about 30 people. So we needed to give them the tools to produce those orders in a rapid fashion and manage them as a group. We're a marketing agency. We don't have big printing presses. We don't really have servers to crunch a lot of the data, but we need to be able to get to the companies that do that. So we have a lot of vendors that we work with, vendors that can do a lot of the data management for us, vendors that can produce those, and vendors that can get the mail out for us. We needed to be able to get those 10,000 orders to those vendors and get them to them rapidly, accurately, and be able to track them. We're also owned by a public company, and that has a lot of other effects on the kind of reporting and guidance that we have to provide to our parent, and then it goes on to Wall Street. So that had a significant effect on what we were going to integrate, and that means that goes to our back office too. So all of our financials had to be rolled in as part of this at the same time. So when I say we have a complex order, if you can imagine what it would take, we're a nonprofit marketing agency. And when we want to send you a piece of mail, we don't want it to just say, Dear John. We want to say, Dear John, thank you for the $50 you gave last year. Would you like to give $100 next year? Here's the effect that that money had. And all that on that same little piece of mail, highly personalized and variable data. So in other words, an extremely complex thing that we have to put together. And in our environment, there's not one object, there's not one record that constitutes an order. It's what we call a composite record. It's composed of all of these different objects that you see here, plus a few more, and we roll them together into this thing that we call an order that's really tied together with Apex and Visualforce. We started the project to produce this 3 years ago, and it has been a continuous evolutionary process to us to get to this thing that we call an order. When we have to get that order out, we knew we had to integrate it to a lot of different places. We have our financials in Microsoft Dynamics. We have other systems that use SQL Server. We have donor database management, 350 million, 400 million people in this country, and they're all managed in a database, and we know their donor history so that we can market to them effectively. PledgeMaker is one of those systems out there. That's a vendor that manages that data for us. We need to be able to get orders to them so we can track that information. Also, we're not just doing little typewritten cards. It's got good graphics. It's got something that gets that message out to the consumer. Well, our graphics and design and creative department had to be able to get to that information too to create proofs. So while they're working in Adobe InDesign, they needed to be able to access that data too and create those proofs. Other database vendors, data processing vendors, production vendors, our data processing vendors have to take the order information that we create with all that personalized information, merge it together with all those lists of names, and create this thing. How do we get all that? Well, we knew we had to make all that happen, and we knew we had to make it happen fast. And like I said, this started 3 years ago, and we chose Cast Iron as a partner to create that. And Cast Iron gave us what we were looking for in terms of flexibility and the ability to create new integrations quickly. And they also gave us a nice on-premise appliance that we actually work with that we can create our own, what I call our web services backbone. All of our vendors tie to us via web services now. And the beautiful thing that we did with Cast Iron and that we learned was that we can spin up these web services very quickly. We can get them up in hours, in days. We can hand off a file to our vendor and say, here's the format, and let them spin up a service that they can just request orders and process that information for us. It has to be bidirectional, though, because not only are we putting together this order, we're pushing that out to our data vendor to merge all that information together. Then they have to give us the results back. The production vendor has to get that information and actually produce the mail. The database vendor has to get that information and know when a donation comes in of $50 that John gave that $50 and add that to his donation tracking and give that back to us so that we can give our clients their ROI, because we're a marketing agency and that's the kind of thing we want to be able to provide to them. This is what I was talking about when I say we had a complex order. There is no one record in Salesforce for us that is called an order. It is a roll-up of several things. The header up there is a Visualforce page. We've got some standard objects. We use the opportunities, of course, contacts and accounts and so on. And then custom objects that are rolled together into this one gigantic screen that we call an order. And what you're seeing here is literally one screen that I've had to split in two because it's so long. The second half of that is what we call a logical or real-time record. All of that information, the name, how much they gave last year, how much we'd like them to give this year, and what the results are, all of that's contained in what we call variable text. The variable text is tracked along with that order as well, and that's what this thing is here on the right. And we need to be able to know which pieces are going out to Los Angeles and Chicago and Clayhatchee, Alabama, and Miami, Florida, and wherever it is that are going to go, that all of that variable text is targeted to that market. So we have to be able to track that quickly, and that's what this is here. This is not a physical record in Salesforce. It's not a physical list. It's assembled on the fly from Salesforce records in a custom object table. It's from internal SQL. It comes sometimes from our financial systems, depending on what's coming through. So all of that has to come together and on the fly, depending on conditions, display to the user so they can see what the status or the state of their order is. We validate addresses with a real-time integration with StrikeIron. And then we manage that text right here, and as you can see the zoom in here, some of the different language. Maybe some customers prefer to use the word gifts, some prefer to use the word donations, and so on. So we have to customize that for our different customers. And creating this kind of a composite record was something that it has evolved over time, but it's something that we were able to create and implement across our business relatively quickly. So this is my favorite slide. We have 100% user adoption, and it's easy for me to say that because, quite frankly, we could not manage our business without using this system. And if you don't use it, you're not going to work for us. So everybody works with the system. We have 100%. And the nice thing about that is, though, we have had a significant change in our business model over the last year, as I'm sure a lot of companies have. We have not only been able to maintain our business, we've actually been able to increase our bottom line by 30% over the last year because of the integrations and the efficiencies that we were able to gain. And that 30%, 90% of that is really gained from operational efficiency. And in fact, if you really take that apart, we only grew our top line by a few percentage points, but our bottom line went up 30%. That tells you exactly what happened with our business, and we're doing quite well because of that. And this system that we do with integrated vendors, our systems, we're averaging about 20,000 to 25,000 API calls a day. We've peaked at over 100 a couple of times, but it's running absolutely reliably, and we have not had one issue with how it actually runs. So what did we learn from all this? Well, the project management is key. We had a dedicated project manager whose job it was to do nothing but manage the status of each of the pieces that we were going on, the timing that it had to be done, and the coordination with all the different vendors. If you can imagine all the vendors that we were working with, not only did we have to get their services online, but they had to be online in the right order and at the right time. And if we didn't have that dedicated person whose job it was to manage that schedule, it would have made life very difficult. Training is key. We never stop training. We have users asking us for more training all the time. And we're just continuously releasing new things and new products for them, and we're able to train them rapidly. End users, early and often, we established groups. In fact, the shirt that I'm wearing says ESOP. ESOP was one of our groups that we put together about bringing people together and really designing the system that they needed. We involved them early from the beginning, and that way not only do we get a better picture of what they need, but in the end, they get a tool that's more effective for them. Standard functionality, we leverage standard functionality a lot. We use things like workflow for a lot of the queuing for our integration. So we don't have to put a lot of that logic into an integrated solution. The integration system, the cast iron box that we use, can be a traffic cop and can manage the data that it goes through. We use workflow as a queuing mechanism for a lot of that. So anytime we can use a standard piece of functionality like that, we do. But we're also not afraid to develop something custom if we need to. Salesforce platform, the integration with cast iron that we use, has allowed us to develop these custom solutions rapidly. And when I say we have integrations running, we have run through hundreds of different integrations over the last 3 years. And without that kind of capability, the kind of business that we run, it wouldn't have been possible. That's really it.
So what I love about this slide, being a customer success manager at Salesforce, I'm always talking about people, process, and technology, and I like to spend most of my time talking about people and process, and the technology kind of takes care of itself. And so for your key lessons learned here, the top three are really people issues, and really focusing on making sure you have sponsorship, you have training, you have the end user's feedback incorporated into your design, because ultimately you're trying to solve those people's processes and make their lives easier. So that's great. And then every time you show the complex composite order slide, I get dizzy. I mean, the amount of integration you're doing kind of boggles the mind. But I know you're using cast iron kind of as a platform. How many total integration points are you managing and maintaining every day?
Today we have probably something like 30 different points, all consolidating around Salesforce.
And so Salesforce touches almost all 30 of those? Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. So once again, the moral of the story here is everyone in the room, you guys can do this too. So let's talk about some of the resources that you guys need to make this happen. There's two things that I think are absolutely critical that you need to put in your file to go and research when you get back home. Number one is the App Exchange. So when you're thinking about an integration project, half the time there's already a connector, there's already an integration that's pre-built, that's ready to go, that might have a fee associated with it. It could be free if you're lucky, like the Google mashups, and it's on the App Exchange. So go and search the App Exchange. There's 100 different integration type solutions, plugins for Salesforce on the App Exchange, and go and see what's already out there. There's an integration with a quoting tool. There's integration with other reporting tools. There's back office integration. There's all kinds of different data model connectors. So go to the App Exchange, do your research there. That's, I think, the best starting point. It'll give you a flavor and a feel for what you're trying to accomplish and what other people have done before you. And then secondly, you need to make sure either as an advanced administrator or as pulling in some of your developer resources within your organization, go to developer.force.com and make sure you do your research on the Web Services API. Everything is fully documented here. The discussion boards are here. All the toolkits are at the developer site. So pretty much, the whole integration education can be found at the developer site. And if you're doing your own kind of custom one-off integration, you can't live without this. If you're using a partner solution or a connector or middleware, you still need this as a background so you can understand where the data is going, what the data model is, and all the different workflows. But make sure you're familiar with the developer side. And I said, for those who are interested, there's 5 or 6 more integration stories here at Dreamforce this week. So if anything pops out of here, jot it down. And if you have questions for our panel, we have 13 minutes left according to the big LED timer here. You can queue up in the aisles here. There's 2 microphones so everyone can hear you. Please queue up. We'll take some questions. The toughest, most interesting question, we're going to award the flip video. And so why don't you go ahead and start a question and go right ahead.
I have hopefully an easy one. Can you tell me, for those of you who have done, the 3 of you specifically, integration from the cloud to an area that's not in the cloud makes me think that you need some type of a opening in your network or demilitarized zone or some type of poking a hole. Can you tell me any caveats to be aware of? Is there a white paper I can go on to Salesforce to find out exactly what I need to do to set that up? Any lessons learned that you can provide?
Well, yeah, I could take that. We have a lot of existing legacy on-premise systems that we have to integrate with as well. And that meant, a couple things. We do have to open a hole in the firewall. But Salesforce has, set IP ranges, and we can control exactly what's happening now. Because of the way we manage it, we use the appliance within our firewall, the cast iron appliance. And so it is the initiator of almost anything. Nothing gets to Salesforce without going through that appliance. So we didn't really have to, we don't use outbound messaging, but that's something that we could do. We didn't really have to open anything from Salesforce in. Everything to us goes out.
Go right ahead.
Yep. Hi, Brent Smith from Beeswax. We do integration between existing FileMaker Pro systems and Salesforce. Wondering how you decided what to move to Salesforce and what not to in terms of legacy systems. What was the deciding point?
How to decide what data you're actually going to integrate and pull over and present in Salesforce?
And what not to.
Did any of you guys go through that decision-making process?
Or not to is just what can we not do? What do we not have a time frame for right now, but everything is going to go into our Salesforce system. It's limitless for us, so we want to get that to be the one user experience we have, so when we onboard a new employee, it's a simple process for them. But now it's just a matter of logistics for us.
And, another recommendation is to do it in phases. So you can piecemeal it and give people what they think they want the most and highest priority first. Kind of work that way. But don't do too much. Don't throw stuff in there that people don't need because then you're just cluttering things up. One more question at the microphone here, and then we'll get to the Twitter feed.
Somehow, yeah.
Are you unbelievable?
Yeah.
Are you unbelievable? Excellent.
Unbelievable, yeah. I'm actually up there twice. So my first question, actually, it's the biggest, I guess, limitation that we keep running into is the API limitations when it comes to real-time integration. So is there any recommendations other than obviously batch loads nightly? That's not really ideal for a lot of our customers. So do you have any methodologies or recommendations on a time frame or ways to get around that API limitation?
You bring up a really good point around the difference between batch integration and real-time integration and being synchronous or asynchronous. And everyone has to kind of go through that decision-making process themselves. Obviously it's cheaper, it requires less resources to do asynchronous integration in batch. And a lot of times your users in your business process, that will satisfy what you need. You don't need to do it real-time, but once an hour or twice an hour or once a night will work. So, but you said a nightly batch isn't going to be good enough for your process requirements?
Yeah, correct. We deal with a lot of nonprofits, and they sometimes when they're running a big event, they need to know their donation numbers immediately.
Right.
When it comes to time-sensitive time frames. So we try and
Mark,
schedule around that, but we always run into API limitations.
Mark, do you run into the API limits?
We have definitely bumped into API limits on occasion, and it really depends. We do both kinds. We do batch and we do real time. For things like donor reporting, we have actually views out to the donor databases. So rather than try to serve up millions of records immediately in Salesforce, we let other systems handle that, and then we just give them a conduit to it.
Okay. And sorry, one more question. When it comes to the two-way integration, we haven't taken that dive yet. Is there anything that is there any tools, or does Cast Iron handle the integration back into your databases for cleanliness of data? Because sometimes it gets messy in Salesforce, as we all probably know.
The most important thing you can do is establish what's your system of record to begin with. So, what is the priority? And for us, we actually establish multiple systems of record. So if it's financial information, it's internal, it's the Microsoft Dynamics that sits in our system. If it's sales information and production information, system of record is Salesforce. And then we just manage the traffic in between the two.
Marshall 5686. Still here? Marshall, the question for the Ninja. You want to answer that one, Tom?
What's the question?
It's about ROI. It's a great ROI question. So we'll read it here. It says, Project Ninja, great success story. Did you plan the ROI measurement as a part of your project before and during, or just do it retroactively?
Well, I knew right away what I was getting rid of, which I was going to take 2 days and turn that down to like a minute. So I knew that the ROI was in there. But when it came down time to crunch the numbers, I just really had a conversation with Boomi after the fact about what had happened to kind of post-op it a little bit. And they started to ask me questions, and so I'd sit and concentrate and just calculate them in my head. I'd say, well, it used to be that long, and this is how much we saved, and we do the simple math. And once you sit down and just have someone asking you the questions, that might be the best way to do it, especially if you partner with someone, because they'll know the question to ask. It'll get you to think critically and start to consider that.
Go right ahead here.
Hi. I will have two set of questions. The first one is when we start, or when generally people start a Salesforce project, they start...
Can you speak up a little?
Yeah, sorry. So when you start a Salesforce project, most customers start in phase 1 to have a standalone system without integration, and then they move to phase 2. And it was our case. When you move to phase 2, you face issues like referential data on, it can be customers, but that has to be addressed by each customer. But it's the case also on list of values and stuff like this. What did you do on this side? Because today in Salesforce you don't have IDs to exchange with external system. When you want to do a broad integration, it's quite complex to manage this.
Do you have 5 minutes for after? Can you stay 5 minutes after the session? Let's take that
Okay.
one offline. That's a tough one.
The second question is concerning the risk of integration. When you integrate data, you will have data written from outside into your Salesforce system. Maybe on the same data, it can be written in Salesforce and from another system to Salesforce. How did you manage to have a kind of backup of your data and, most important, capability to restore data if there is any corruption within the integration?
guess it depends on your source database, right? If you want to restore, and if you're going to trust that, if you're doing a one-way, that would be the way to do it. The other way I would say would be a backup or some sort of validation that you have on the fields. And we have another integration piece where we're pummeling our system, our Salesforce system, with hundreds of websites, information from them. So we just build in very strong error messages to make sure that we know exactly what someone's trying to do that they shouldn't be able to do, so that we get a log of that later on and look and say, is this validation correct? Is that what we don't want to have in there? So it's just a risk. You know, I mean, what's more important, having data that might be on the edge of what you consider to be good data, or not having the data at all?
Okay, but there is no standard or existing custom solutions for restoring data into a Salesforce system?
I think that there is some systems out there that will do backups. I've seen one that backs up to basically a SQL database. I don't know if you've seen one. Yeah.
Backup is existing. Restoring is more complex due to IDs that are generated automatically and technical things.
Yeah, restoring data to Salesforce is more difficult because of the relationships. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can approach that. Honestly, and I've been using Salesforce 6-7 years now, I've never had a data corruption problem, not one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think that's going to be the last live question. I'll answer all the questions on Twitter, and I can send out the presentation deck for folks who tag themselves during Twitter. We want you to tell us what you thought of this session when you go and do the reviews at the little booths. I hope you win the Nano. And we're going to give away the flip here, so let's figure out how to do that. I think we're going to leave it up to the audience. I think it's between Unbelievable, Marshall 5686, and Mitchell W. Fox.
That's not me.
And we didn't. Where's Mitchell? Did we answer your question? Limitations of using Salesforce to compile. So you stumped the band. I think you just won the video. You just won the flip. No, let's answer your question. You're talking about data warehouse, like how to integrate with a data warehouse? What kind of data warehouse do you guys have?
So just want to know, we have customer data on many different systems. It's very hard for us to generate reports because everything's on those different systems. Want to explore using Salesforce to generate reports that would pull trading data from one system, their application data from another system to their call center service information, sort of one unified view of these are customers that are earning us a lot of money, these are customers that are costing us a lot in service, etc. Can you generate, how would you pull those things together? Are there limits to the amount of data you can pull into systems?
Actually, that last slide that I showed, that's our wicked looking order, that page on the right side is almost exactly what you're talking about. It is pulling data in from a variety of different sources. And so we don't actually move data. We just want to display that data. And so it's a Visualforce page that ties into cast iron web services that we just build on the fly that we need to connect to whatever data source we need, and all that serves it right back up into the Visualforce page, and that's basically a report that we need, and it works very well.
Mitchell, you have to decide what you want your reporting tool to be, right? So are you thinking you want this in Salesforce to be able to report on these different systems in Salesforce, or some companies have another reporting engine that overlays their data warehouse? So then you might take the Salesforce data, dump it into the data warehouse, and then use that other reporting tool across systems. But it sounds like you need middleware, integration middleware, to really make it all come together and talk to the right places. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining. Have fun this week.
It really is.